Hello, YTPC. Ethan, Parsimonious Piper here. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous North Carolina afternoon, and I've got dogs running around behind me and some construction going on over here, so pardon the distractions and the noise. We're going to get to some morsels for mental manducation in just a moment. But first, in a nice pipe by Lee bent billiard, I have got some Mac Baron Symphony. A very nice soft burley for those of you who think you may not like burleys. Where to begin? Well, there are a couple of schools in Chicago that are up for renaming because, well, the left just doesn't like the people who they are currently named for. But there's a catch. One of the schools, the person that has been suggested as a namesake, a new namesake for the school, has also come under fire from the left. Apparently, Barack Obama, our country's first black president, and until now, the farthest left president we'd ever had, is not woke enough for the people of Chicago. I kid you not. I told you, conservatives could make a drinking game out of watching the left eat their own. In a related story, in Portland, another source of endless entertainment for those who still have maintained some semblance of sanity. A school which was recently renamed in favor of a late 19th century, early 20th century black journalist who did important work documenting and bringing attention to lynchings. Not a bad namesake for a school at all. However, when it was suggested that the school mascot be an evergreen tree, someone decried that as possibly racist because of the use of trees in lynchings. Yeah, I kid you not. Seriously, we can't even name schools after trees because trees are racist. You have to love it. Last year, we've been doing this COVID thing for a year now. Last year, if you recall, CNN mocked President Trump mercilessly for having suggested that might be a good idea to treat people who had come down with the virus, or to help prevent the spread of the virus, get outside, get some sunshine. For this, he was mocked. Guess what the University of California, Santa Barbara just published this last week? A study about the effects of sunlight on the coronavirus. Read it. Don't expect an apology from CNN, where politics trumps journalism every time. CNN reporter, sticking with CNN, Devon Cole, recently wrote an article, purportedly not an opinion article, this was in their news section, on transsexual athletes, in which he wrote, and I quote, "There is no consensus criteria for assigning sex at birth," end quote. But they call conservatives the anti-science group. We're going to finish up with a little bit of voter ID law, news, and discussion. If you haven't been under a rock, you're aware that the state of Georgia is under fire for having recently passed a law which, among its pieces, requires more stringent voter ID verification in order to vote either in person or by remote or early ballot. The left is screaming that this is in fact racist. Now, if you recall, a week or two ago, I highlighted Congressman Burgess Owens, who is against laws which weaken voter ID, and himself being black, can't understand why liberals think blacks are somehow incapable of obtaining a voter ID, especially in a state like Georgia where the state provides it for free. To top this off, Rasmussen last week, Rasmussen is one of the most accurate polling groups. They've been right far more often than they've been wrong, despite sometimes the unpopularity of their polling results on both sides of the political aisle. Rasmussen reports 69% of blacks, 82% of other minorities support voter ID laws. So I guess the majority of blacks and other minorities are racist against minorities too? Explain that one to me. Major League Baseball, of course, has gone full-on woke, apparently, and has tossed its 2 cents in regarding Georgia's new law. They have announced that their All-Star game will no longer be held in Atlanta. Of course, I suppose they don't realize what they're really doing is hurting all of the black employees and black-owned businesses that would have made millions from having the All-Star game held in Atlanta. But collateral damage is really less important than virtue signaling. Now, what I really want to know, Major League Baseball, is if voter ID for something that is incredibly important is racist. How about the requirements at virtually every ballpark to show ID in order to pick up your tickets, or even in order to get into the venue, or once you're inside to buy a beer? All of those things must be racist as well. Will you stop playing games at every park that requires those? Show me you're serious. And last, on the voter ID front, our brilliant president has called for a boycott, an economic boycott of Georgia, in protest of this voter ID law and the suppression of minorities. Okay. For suppression of minorities, let's say you do China. We're not sending minorities to prison camps and exterminating them. Or just for voter ID law, how about, are we going to boycott Norway, Italy, Northern Ireland, Holland? The list goes on and on. Mexico and Canada, who all have voter ID laws. Where's the boycott? Okay, again, virtue signaling is much more important to the left than actual results or consistency. This is why we have people screaming racism about voter ID laws, when in fact minorities have been shown through polling to support them. 75% of Americans overall, but even a majority of minorities support voter ID laws. They are not racist. However, as long as you can take something and just scream racism, 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 you can keep a base worked up into a frenzy. This is a brilliant tactic. Why? Because it works. Not because it's honest, not because it's truthful or even legitimate in any way. Because it works. I'd like someone to explain to me. I've heard it said that voter fraud is really not that big a problem in America. And my question would be, okay, for the sake of argument, suppose it's not. Suppose that if we put voter ID laws in place in all 50 states, etc., that this would not, in fact, solve a problem with voter fraud. Okay, stipulated. Now, what's the negative to having voter ID? Why would you oppose requiring that people who vote for the person in particular who is still the leader of the free world, like it or not, show ID? What's the problem with that? The only thing that I can think of is if you do intend to allow people to cheat either somehow in person or through mail-in and early voting, that you don't want people to have to verify that they are in fact legal eligible voters in the United States. Give me another reason. Glad to hear it. Now with that, folks, it's a gorgeous afternoon. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this lovely Mac Burley. Light something you like. Enjoy your afternoon.